Hey, what is up guys, my name is Luis. After some extensive research I have found the best settings for Warzone if you want to maximize your FPS. Stay until the end of the video as I have a special trick at the end that is going to give you a nice boost on top of what we are starting with right now. Let's begin with the in-game settings in Warzone. These settings are focused on getting the most FPS while retaining a competitive edge and also decent visual quality. A huge advantage we PC users have is that we can slide the FOV to 120, so I recommend that you crank that slider all the way up. For the display mode, I recommend that you play in full screen if you have one monitor, or if you have two monitors, I recommend that you play in full screen borderless as I have, then it's going to be easier to use your second monitor while in-game. Make sure that you have your GPU as your display adapter. Check to make sure that your screen refresh rate is at the highest setting. Render resolution, I recommend that you play on your native screen resolution, so in my case that's 1440p. As for the rest of the settings like aspect ratio and VSync, you can see what I'm using, but these settings don't affect your FPS in-game. For details and texture, I have these settings: streaming quality to normal, texture resolution to low. You'll definitely gain the most FPS from very low, but the game looks absolutely garbage at that point, so that is not something I would choose for that extra FPS, as I like to play a game that actually looks decent. Texture filter anisotropic to high. Particle quality was set to high due to it having a weird shimmering effect in the trees and surrounding areas when it is on low, as you can see on the screen. Bullet impacts and sprays we have to enable, tessellation to all, on-demand texture streaming to enable, and streaming quality to normal. Shadows are going to grab a huge chunk of your FPS in game, and I recommend that you basically leave all of these settings to either disabled or low. There is little to no difference in the game in my opinion, and for example ray tracing will seriously cut your FPS in half. If you're not happy with the current FPS you're getting, you can turn down your render scale and texture quality, as these are the two settings that really affects FPS the most. There is of course several factors to FPS we can't control,
but there are things we can control.
I will quickly go over the settings you should be using in Windows as well, as there is no point in finding the perfect settings in game if you have not found the best settings in Windows as well. Go to the start menu and type in game mode. Make sure that game mode is off, as you generally don't want any help from Windows when you're chasing the most FPS. Also make sure that Xbox game bar is disabled, as this can steal some valuable frames as well. Next thing you should check out and missing out on if you're not using is overclocking. Don't be scared, it is 100% completely safe and you can at any time revert back to the default setting if you wish. Overclocking can be a very nice way to get more performance out of your GPU without spending any money. I recommend that you use Msi Afterburner, as you can see here. I will give you a brief overview on how you can overclock without making this too boring for you guys when talking about all the details. As you can see on screen right now, this is the overclock I have been running on my card for over 2 years now, and it's completely stable and has actually been giving me up to 10 FPS in certain games over default values. Both the power limit and temp limit you can drag to the max, and the actual overclock is setting the core clock speed and memory clock speed. I have a modest overclock at only 100 plus MHz and 500 MHz on the memory clock. Most modern GPUs should be able to handle plus 50 on the core clock and 200 on the memory clock. You always want to start with 20 to 30 MHz increments on the core clock and memory clock, and then running a game or benchmarking program to see if your overclock is stable. And now for the special trick. Warzone is a very CPU intensive game, and therefore closing programs running in the background while you are gaming can give you a huge boost in performance. Applications such as Chrome, Steam and Spotify all sucks performance from your system, and for example many tabs open in Chrome have a tendency to refresh at certain intervals. Close all of these down and you will see a performance boost. That is my tips on how to improve your FPS in Warzone. If you liked the video, please leave a like, and if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all the latest tips and tricks in Warzone.